Welcome to this explainer. Today we are going to uncover exactly how you can spot those massive world-altering business shifts before they actually happen. And more importantly, we'll look at how to avoid getting completely disrupted by unseen forces that you didn't even know were coming for you. So what really happens when your biggest threat isn't even in your industry? Let's dive right into this terrifying but honestly super common reality: getting completely blindsided by a competitor you didn't even know existed. Just imagine waking up one day to find your core customer base has vanished. And they didn't go to a rival offering a slightly cheaper product. No, they went to a completely different type of business that seemingly popped up out of nowhere. Andy Grove, the former CEO of Intel, actually hit the nail on the head when he called this a strategic inflection point. It's basically a time in the life of a business when its very fundamentals are about to change. But here's the crazy secret about these strategic inflection points. They don't just happen overnight. They gestate slowly. It happens gradually, and then suddenly all at once, effectively changing the rules of the game before most people even realize the game has shifted at all. That's why today's explainer draws directly from Rita McGrath's brilliant book, Seeing Around Corners. It's an incredible resource that actually gives us the practical tools to spot these warning signs early on. McGrath argues that if we want to survive an inflection point, we have to completely, fundamentally rethink how we view our competition and our market. The very first step to surviving one of these shifts is a massive paradigm shift in our own heads. We absolutely must stop thinking about traditional industries and start thinking in terms of dynamic arenas. You see, an arena isn't boxed in by standard product categories. Instead, it's a competitive landscape defined by the underlying progress or the actual outcomes that customers are trying to achieve. Let's break down traditional industry logic versus arena thinking, because this is absolutely crucial. While traditional industry logic effectively locks you into a cage match, fighting over identical product features with the usual suspects, arena thinking completely opens your eyes to out-of-category threats. You have to ask yourself, are you just tracking the people making the exact same stuff as you, or are you watching the entire arena? Because in an arena, you are looking at absolutely everyone fighting for the exact same pool of customer resources. Right at the center of any arena is this fantastic concept known as the job to be done theory. Building on the work of Craig Christensen, this asserts a really profound truth. Customers don't just buy products. They essentially hire them to solve a specific problem or to make progress in their lives. Think about it this way. People don't buy a quarter-inch drill because they simply love owning a drill. They buy it because they desperately need a quarter-inch hole in their wall. To put this into perspective, consider this mystery. Why did traditional teen apparel retailers suddenly hit a massive brick wall around the year 2007? For decades, malls were the undisputed center of the teenage universe, right? Retailers built their entire business models around back-to-school seasons and mall foot traffic. But then, almost overnight, all those reliable metrics suddenly started to slip. At that exact time, there was a staggering pool of resources up for grabs. Back in 2007, researchers found that teens had about $80 billion in direct spending power, with parents kicking in another $110 billion for things like food, entertainment, and personal care. That is a massive amount of money. And the traditional retailers? Well, they thought they were just fighting other clothing stores for a slice of that massive pie. But watch how this timeline actually builds. When the first iPhone launched in 2007 and Android commercialized shortly after, the entire foundation of teen discretionary spending shifted. It was fundamental. Fast forward to 2014, and researchers were suddenly hearing teenagers say things like, clothes just aren't as important to me anymore. That entire spending pool was being completely rerouted toward technology, data plans, and just staying plugged in. So what was the real job here? It was connection and identity. Teenagers didn't suddenly stop wanting to connect with friends, establish their identity, and show off. Of course not. They just found a much, much better digital tool to get that exact same job done. In the past, the job of showing people who I am meant buying a trendy outfit from the mall. Now, it just requires a social media profile and a high-quality camera right in your pocket. Furthermore, being seen in the exact same outfit repeatedly on platforms like Instagram suddenly became a total negative, which completely altered the clothing consumption experience in the first place. And the retailers totally missed this. They missed it because they were obsessed with lagging financial metrics, like same-store sales and sales per square foot. They completely ignored the weak early signals, like teens showing up at mall food courts, not to shop for clothes, but just to buy cheap food so they could sit there and access the free Wi-Fi for their phones. It's wild to think about, but early on, the signal of a massive shift is incredibly weak and noisy, making it super easy to just dismiss. If we break it down step by step, here's exactly how that plays out with Arena thinking. Step 1, the underlying desire to connect remains absolutely constant. Step 2, teens start hiring smartphones instead of clothes to fulfill that desire. And step 3, that massive $80 billion resource pool totally shifts. The job of being connected literally squeezed the job of buying clothes right out of the teenage budget. The entire arena shifted right under the retailers' noses, and they didn't see it coming simply because smartphones weren't considered part of the apparel industry. Which brings us to a pretty urgent question for all of us. How can you equip yourself to tell if your own business's competitive advantage is fading before the financial numbers start to tank? Because, as we just saw, by the time it hits the balance sheet, it's already a lagging indicator. It is way too late. Well, McCrath's research highlights 5 rapid-fire surprising early warning signs. And these are far more telling than traditional financial indicators. You really need to pay close attention if 1. Your own leaders or executives literally stop buying or using your product. 2. Your absolute top talent is packing up and leaving for other organizations. 3. Your customers start accepting good enough, cheap alternatives because they just don't value your premium features anymore. 4. Competition starts emerging from places you completely didn't expect. And 5. Your technical teams are actively predicting that a new technology is going to fundamentally change the business. If you see these, alarm bells should be ringing. Because there is a really harsh reality to timing here. It's basically an inverse relationship between your degrees of freedom, which is your ability to actually do something about a problem, and the signal strength of a coming change. As the signal of an impending shift gets stronger and more obvious to absolutely everyone, your degrees of freedom to actually maneuver and change your strategy completely plummet. Honestly, if you wait until the disruption is obvious to everyone, you are already trapped. So, what is the ultimate cost of ignoring the job to be done? Well, if you ignore the actual progress your customers are trying to make, or if you make it frustrating and difficult for them by clinging to outdated industry assumptions, an out-of-category competitor is inevitably going to step into your arena to remove those frustrations. They will happily take your customers' resources while you are too busy watching your traditional industry rivals. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought that perfectly sets up our next explainer. I want you to think deeply about your current customer base right now. If a vastly better tool came along tomorrow to help them get their underlying job done, would your customers actually stay out of true loyalty? Or are they just hostages to a lack of better options? Thank you so much for exploring this arena with me today. Keep your eyes on the edges, and I'll see you in the next explainer where we tackle exactly that question.